Hello, everyone. Welcome to Green Marketing Zone's Digital Marketing Talks. Doesn't it feel like everyone is a brand these days? If you have any sort of online presence, then you're a brand. Whether you're a student or you're a professional looking for a job or an entrepreneur looking to increase your customers, you better have an online presence these days where people are searching for you. If you are trying to build a business, it is important to build your own personal brand first. I can understand that it can be very frustrating sometimes, especially when you are just starting out. So do stick till the end because my guest today will be sharing strategies on how can you build your brand in 2020 that is profitable. And this talk is intended for educational purposes only. My guest today is Maggie Isley. She's a founder and lead designer at 9to9studios.com and a brand cohesive marketing expert. So please join me in welcoming her. Hi, Maggie. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. We wanted you to come on board with us to help business owners about how to build their brand and get recognized with their target customers. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Okay, so I work with entrepreneurs who are looking to build a brand online, basically anyone purpose-driven who wants to make a difference but wants to make some money too. So that's my big target market. And we build a brand from the ground up. That's it. That's my big passion. And then from there, I do also coach. So we work on brand cohesive marketing, taking that brand that we build and carrying it over into every aspect of your marketing.
That's great. So what inspired you to start this business?
It actually started as a blog. It started back when blogging was cool, blogging was a thing. And I was getting sponsorships from Pier 1, Coca-Cola, some big name sponsors. And local entrepreneurs started coming to me and saying, hey, can you brand my business? Because I have 15 years in corporate experience. And they were like, you're doing great things online. Would you be willing to brand me? And I was like, sure. Because I didn't really know what that meant in the holistic sense. And then once I started helping them create logos and the feelings behind it, I really researched brand strategy and realized how much it's needed in the holistic sense. And that's what got me started as what I am today. So that started back in 2016.
Wow, that's a great story. So when it comes to branding yourself or your business, it's mostly what people see or think about your products or services. And when someone starts a business, they have to understand that what is the product, what is the niche that they are going to be in, and who actually they are going to offer this product, who will be their target audience, and how actually they are going to market their product. So products or services. So, and it gives something to relate to your customers as well when you think about branding your product. So, how do you think you can build a profitable brand from scratch that can convert your leads into clients?
It is a process, but it's worth every minute of investing. So here's the platform that I use. You start with your why, right? Everything starts with why. I'm sure everybody watching has heard the Simon Sinek talk. If you haven't, get yourself over to the TED Talk once this is over. Right. So you start with your why and you make sure you remain connected to that through every step of the next process. Then you start building on the mission. Everything else that goes on top of that is going to be strategy based. We're going to talk about your vision casting for your future. We're going to talk about, what else do we talk about? We're going to talk about your ICA, your ideal client avatar, who you're selling to. right? Who you want to be selling to. We're going to talk about your profit picture. So we're going to start talking about all of these strategy things before we get into the actual brand part. Because without the strategy, you can't build the brand. Now, I'm assuming when we get to that strategy that your mindset's right. Because without the right mindset, the strategy is not going to stick. So you need to go into that going, hey, I've got this. We're going to get it done. Everything is a learning experience. So you come and going with that. Then we go with your strategy. Then we go with the brand. So then we start going, okay, we have this done. Let's start looking at brand narrative, brand voice. We start going with the brand personality. We start looking at brand, and then we get into brand visuals. So it's this pyramid of strategy and branding and mindset, and it's a lot to do. But when you do it right the first time, you don't have to keep going back and redoing it. Like, how often do you see big companies rebrand? It's not often.
Exactly.
Like, Olive Garden rebranded once every, 15, 20 years. They just got that new logo 3 years ago. And that was the first time in my lifetime. So when you start thinking about how often big companies rebrand, it's because it's worth the investment the one time, and then it sticks for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your why is very, very important here, because that gives you the clarity of whatever you're offering. So, so all of these whys, like, why are you doing it? For whom you're doing it? And why should people pay attention to you?
And why now?
Yeah.
Why now? Why should people pay attention? What is the difference? What gap are you filling? Like, what is the difference between you and, maybe you are not a competitor. Okay, maybe you don't have competitors. Maybe you truly are filling a gap. But who is your closest one? And what are they doing? And what are you doing differently? What is your disruptor statement? These are all questions that you want to ask yourself that is part of your brand. A lot of people think your brand is a logo. It's not. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these questions are your brand. And it's your brand applies to you whether you offer a coaching service or you're selling earrings. Those are all, it doesn't matter what your business is, you're a brand. You could be an influencer selling space on your Instagram account. You're a brand. Everything is branded. And you still want to ask these questions. One of the questions that I ask all of my branding clients is, what do you want your legacy to be? Exactly. These are important things to answer. And it's not, it's worth the time in the front end to be clear on this, because otherwise you get really disconnected from why you're doing these things. And it becomes hard to wake up some days, especially when the world is nuts, and you go, what's the point of getting up and doing this again tomorrow? What if none of the prospects close? It's like, well, why am I doing this? Oh, I know why I'm doing this. I know what I want my legacy to be. It's so clear. A bad day is not a bad life. A bad day is not a bad business. And it becomes easier to keep going.
Exactly. The clarity is something that can solve all of these problems for you. Because I was talking to the other day, I was talking to one of the lady, and I asked her this question. I said, why are you doing it? What you're doing it? I asked her the same question. And she was like, I have never thought about it. Why am I doing it? And when I asked her these questions, after a week or so, I told her to write down all of those questions and just think about it. Like, what is the benefit of you doing this? What are you providing to your customers? And after a week or so, she called me and she was like, I have never thought about these things. And now I have so much clarity in what I am trying to do, because that is giving me way more confidence in that, okay, I can go and make a difference in someone's life. So
Exactly.
that was huge.
Exactly. And the other thing, when we're talking about whys, is that there are levels of whys.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the 5 levels of why?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's the other thing to challenge someone. So if you're challenging yourself, and this is for anybody watching, if you're challenging yourself and you're like, why am I doing this? Oh, because I want to make money. No, not the answer. So you're close to the answer though. So what you do next is you go, okay, so I'm doing this because I want to make money. Why do I want to make money? So you keep going until you get to the real answer. I want to make money because I want security. Okay, why do you want security? Because I didn't feel secure growing up. Okay, why didn't you feel secure growing up? Because we moved around a lot. Okay, so you want security so that way your family feels like, you know what I mean? So you're doing this because you want to be able to provide that sense of security for your family. That
Mm-hmm.
becomes your why. So it's not about the money, it's about the sense of security. And
Exactly.
just keep asking yourself why until you get to the real why. So that's the other component when you're asking the whys. Just keep asking. It's not any more complex than that. Just keep asking why until you really uncover the why.
Exactly. So a brand typically comprises of a name, a tagline, or a logo. Maybe
Mhm.
you'll have a website or some kind of a brand voice. And I've like when I started reading about all of these things, I was amazed that I read that it takes almost 21 times for somebody to actually start noticing it. Because
Mhm.
when I was talking to one of my friend and she said, no, it's like maybe 7 to 10 times. And in last couple of years, it has not been able to even send 7 to 10 times if people are looking at your messaging or your content or whatever you're offering to them. It's not helping them. It has raised to even 21 times, and even this 22nd time sometimes people are not even noticing. So how can somebody stand out in the brand of in this ocean of businesses and websites and social media pages and infographics and all of these things?
So, first of all, that starts with your core values and your true messaging. So, being consistent and getting people into your sphere. So, once they're in your sphere of whatever that is, if that's Instagram, if that's Facebook, wherever your sphere is, and then truly connect with them because people buy from people. They don't buy from business robots. no one's buying no one's
Exactly.
buying from a business robot. Like, yeah, have you ever gotten those spam messages on Instagram or Facebook and they're like, buy followers today, 10,000, and then a whole bunch of emojis, and you're like, who's following up on this? Like, ooh,
Mm,
sign me up. I'll take 10. Like, no one responds to that. And people are buying from people. So get them in your sphere. And in my case, you're a member of my Facebook group, right?
mhm.
So my Facebook group, I just deliver. I bring them people into my sphere and I give value. That's what you're doing here today. We're on your YouTube, on your Facebook page, we're everywhere, and then you just deliver value.
Exactly.
And that's how you get people in there. So what the number that I usually use is 16. So 16 to 21 is
Mhm.
the is right. Somewhere in there. It's a high number. It is not what it used to be. So give them everything. I go live every Tuesday and give free trainings. I did free website audits because it's easier for me to just give my knowledge. I I can give that to you. Now, do you get better knowledge when you pay me? Yeah. because I'm not distracted. I'm not giving, I'm not sharing things with other people. I'm not, yeah, you do. But will I gladly answer your question for free at any time? Yeah. What you see is what you get. Show up, give value in advance, and let people know that you are exactly who you say you are, and you will help them out if you're able. That's who people want to do business with. And if they don't want to do business with you, then they're not your ideal customer. Go away. That's my thinking. Like, if people don't like it, then I don't want to do business with you either. Like, clearly you aren't my ideal customer, because that's the other thing. You need to know who you want to do business with. So your ideal customer needs to be attracted to you, and the people that aren't your ideal customer, they need to see you and see how you're behaving and be like, no thanks. And that's fine. They need to be repelled by you the same way that you're attracting your ideal customers.
Exactly. Because something that was very interesting, I read the other day that there are 60% of shoppers who says that they only buy from brands. They only care about brands. And only 21% said that they bought a product because they like the brand. So you're having a brand is something so important and so huge that it can make or break for your business. So that is very, very important. So in that case, how can a business create a story around their experience to build their brand?
There are so many stories that you need to build around your brand. You need to build your founder story, which is what my story is about, the blog, and then turning that into, people coming to me and me building it. You need to create that. You need to create a customer journey story. So what you want your customer to experience along the way, you need to create that. You need to create a hero's journey story where you as the founder have a hero's journey. You have so many stories you need to create. It's an entire branding exercise all by itself. And then once you create them, you need to create 3 different versions. You need to create a long version that you can tell as an interview, like as the entire interview story. You need to create a mid one that you can answer a question with, and then a short one that you can just rattle off super quick as an intro. So you should have multiple stories depending on what it is that you are trying to do. If you're trying to sell a certain offer, you should have a story built around that. When you overcame something and how that offer is going to help, you should have a story for that. And then you should have 3 versions of every story. So storytelling is super important to a brand.
Yeah, thanks for sharing these valuable tips with our audience. I know that having a story is very important, because once you communicate with your customers, it helps you to tell your message to them. Your messaging is very, very important. Otherwise, they don't know what you're selling, what is the product or service that you're trying to sell to them, or even to find out who is your target audience. Your story has an impact. So definitely that's a very, very important thing. Mm-hmm. So what are the strategies for branding that a business owner should keep in mind before they reach out to their prospects?
They definitely need to know that they are reaching out to the right people. Mm-hmm. They need to know that they are speaking to a human, and they need to talk to that person like a person. So I compare it to going on a date, right? So you go on your first date, and you don't propose on a first date, right? That would be weird. If you went on a first date and you say, hey, this was a great dinner, let's get married. And then the other person would say, no, go away, right? Like, that's not how that works. Donald Miller talks about this in his book, where he talks about how they say, marry me, and the other person will say no, and then so he tries it again. So comparing it to first dates, you want to keep in mind that every interaction with your client is another date. And then finally, you build enough trust to ask them to marry you, which is the buy. Don't ask them to marry you the first time you talk to them. That's weird. Nobody likes that. So you can't just, and I got a DM just, I think it was last night, where somebody asked me to like join their group and buy something. Like 2 asks in one DM. I was like, so many asks. Like, you just introduced yourself to me. Start with an introduction. Find out how the person's doing. Always end with open-ended questions so that we can keep the conversation flowing. Don't hit them up and try and get them to marry you on the first interaction. So creepy.
Exactly. That is very, very important, because your brand awareness and customers' trust, they are very, very important. Once the customer has that trust on somebody's brand, they will definitely come towards your brand. So
Right.
you don't have to, I heard from somebody that she said that when I am, so she has a coaching business. So she was saying that when I have my website, I have my Facebook page, and I have all the social media and everything, and I don't go after customers. People come to me. So that is what, when somebody has a brand, you can tell that people are actually noticing them. There is a brand awareness there. People know that what they're doing, why they're doing, and for whom they're doing it. That is
Exactly.
how your target audience is actually coming towards you. You don't have to go, definitely when you're starting, you have to go after it, right? But of course, once you have the brand that is that has that awareness and identity and people's trust, then once you have all of those things, then your customer will come to you. Definitely.
And when someone comes to you, this is something else I suggest. When someone comes to you, remember they've raised their hand. So they volunteered themselves. And you don't need to convince, because they've come to you, and your job at that point is to offer an opportunity. They can convince themselves. All you have to do is ask questions that lead them into convincing themselves. So that's where asking multiple why type questions, strategic questions, and they will convince themselves why you are the best person to work with. You don't need to convince anybody of your value as long as you have a strong brand, testimonial, social proof. People will know why you're the best brand to work with. And if you're not a good fit for them, they wouldn't have raised their hand. They already did the research. So when someone raises their hand first, that's the best type of person to work with, because they already did their research, or they wouldn't be spending their time on you.
Exactly. So we have somebody here. Samira asked a question. She said, how do you build that relationship with your customer?
So the way that I have built relationships is through Facebook groups and Instagram. Those are my 2 main relationship building platforms. The current hair color I have right now is because I let my Instagram followers choose between having pink hair, which is what I had last, or going back dark. I didn't let them pick the actual color. I just said, should I keep my hair pink, or should I go dark again? And then I did a poll because I was undecided. I was like, I'm not really sure what I want. So I let them pick, and they voted, like a lot of them, and they picked to let my hair go dark. So I cultivate that by interacting with them. I talk to them constantly. I'm always up in their stories, and I'm always DMing them, but then they pay me back by interacting with me. So people buy from people. Be a human. be a person, talk to them. They'll talk to you. So I let them pick my hair color, essentially. Essentially, they didn't pick red, but I let them decide. And then, again, my Facebook groups where I interact with them all the time. So I go live, I do things for them, I teach them, I bring in experts on stuff I don't know about, because if I don't know about it, I'm not going to pretend like I do. So I have a Facebook ad strategist coming in on the 30th. Like, I just bring in people to talk and teach. And then I do things like Thankful Thursday, just to let people know that, number one, I'm human, and I don't only want to talk about business. And number two, I want to hear what's going on. Like, what's going on with you? What are you thankful for? Like, you don't have to talk about business. You can talk about anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that way they know there's a person behind this brand. It's not just me being like, business, business, business. Let's talk about branding, business. I want to, like when my birthday happened, I was like, let's talk about my birthday. I want to see my cake, like that kind of stuff. And it's, to me, being authentic is like a huge part of my brand. That's just like really big for me. So when I use my brand, like my interactions with my clients and my customers, or even if you want to call them prospects, but really they're all just humans. So with people, I'm just myself wherever I show up.
Exactly.
And people respond to that because they don't feel like I'm trying to sell them anything, because I'm not. Again, if they raise their hand, I will gladly talk to them about it. But I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, definitely connecting with your customers and having that relationship with them helps a lot. That is how they're gonna give you what you're looking for, because you're actually solving their problem. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where your target audience comes in. Because I've seen with even as of right now, I've seen with many pages that if your target audience is not there, or if they're just confused that what is this all about, they're not going to interact with you. And that thing, it takes time. It's not going to be the first day, but definitely it's something that you have to put more effort into building that trust or building that awareness or relationship with your customers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, how does defining your target audience help with branding your business? How much is it important, do you think?
So important. Like, so with all the O's. Like, it is so important. When you, the why is obviously the most important. But the next most important would be defining your target audience, or your ICA, your ideal client avatar, would be the next most important. Because this is a really common marketing phrase. If you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody, right? Because you can't just yell into the void and hope somebody responds.
Exactly.
You need to dial it in and speak to somebody. Like, I am speaking to somebody clearly in all of my marketing. Like, she is spunky. She is really a go-getter. Like, I am speaking to a very clear person. And that's who responds. And my group only has like 3 men in it. Do I ever say I'm only working with women? No. But one of the men is my husband. And like another one of the men is a speaker that I have speak often. And I don't really know the third guy. But I often reject men because they're not giving me answers that resonate with people in my group. Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, I don't really. But I attract women because that's who I'm speaking to. So identifying who you are speaking to is everything. Does that mean you can't attract other people? No, that's not what that means. But it means that you will attract more of who you want to work with, which means you'll build a business that you really love. And that's so important. So important.
Exactly. And how do you define your brand voice? Like, I know that messaging is very, very important. When you're communicating to your customer, your words and your messaging has so much impact that it can, because especially when you're on Facebook, you have so much noise, you have so many people, and you're competing not only with your competitors, but also with the other noise as well, because you can get distracted so easily. And if you're doing something, you go for doing something on Facebook and you're just ending up looking at something else because there is so much distraction there.
Yes.
So it's like very, very important to have your brand voice there so people can actually pay attention to what you're telling them, right? So how do you define that brand voice?
So this is a very easy exercise to do it. And this brand voice normally goes hand in hand with personality, but here's an even easier way to do it if you just want to do it quick instead of doing a whole strategy session. Define your core values of your brand. And then for every core value, define the voice of that value. So for example, if you're doing like authenticity, you can have the voice of like accepting or compassionate. You can have like, or kindness, I guess would be a really good one for compassionate. You can have whatever that core value is, you can define the voice that goes with that value. And that way, you know, you're always true to your values and your voice. Normally there's a step in between there where we define your brand personality, but this, you are still going to do that other exercise. So there's a quick cheat for you if you just want to do that to make sure that you're remaining true to yourself in your messaging. Come up with your core values for your business and then figure out the corresponding voice for those values. And it will keep you clear. And when you're being authentic to your brand and your voice, again, keep people in your sphere, keep showing up as you 100%, and you'll be good.
So can you give us any example of like, how can I find my brand voice if I am trying to build a brand?
Sure. So can you give me an example of your core value? Give me a core value of yours.
To build an online presence for digital creators or for businesses.
Okay. So that core value would be connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So connection. And then your brand voice for that would be, I would call that collaborative. So you would speak to people in a very connection-based collaborative way. So you would use inclusive voice words, inclusive tones. It would be a very we, a very us, a very inclusive voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the word I would use for that. So when you're looking to build your voice, and this is a little bit higher level because we're literally doing a strategy session, but you would then come up with your core values, make a list of them, and then make a list of how that translates into a voice. So you want to have a connection point with people. That's one of your values. Then you want to be inclusive and you want to be collaborative. You want to have a place for people to come together. Then use an inclusive tone of voice. Supportive tone of voice. Those are two tones that you can use right there when you're speaking to somebody. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then that archetype would then be, and if you want to talk about archetypes real quick, because I know we were talking about that, that would be like a sage / caregiver. It would be more of a sage. But yeah, so then you would be a sage, which is an educator, which is somebody who is bringing people together to then teach them things.
Yes, exactly. So I was reading about archetypes, and I read that there are 12 types of archetypes actually that you have to define when you're actually looking for branding for your business. So can you explain a little bit what is archetype here for our audience?
Yeah, I actually opened that door myself. So let me. So archetypes. I actually have a stack of archetype cards right here.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that archetypes work is there are 12, and then there are sub-archetypes or archetype families. So you can see here the different archetypes. And what it is in every story ever told, archetypes are used, right? If you think of Star Wars, we have the hero archetype used with like Luke Skywalker, and then the sage would be Yoda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the rebel would be Han Solo. So, like, we have all the different archetypes reflected in that one story.
Uh-huh.
But when you are creating your brand, you can be a mix of archetypes. Most people are. Nobody, no brand is just one archetype. So me, for example, I'm a jester archetype. I'm actually a very fun, goofy archetype.
Mm-hmm.
But when I am designing and I am creating somebody's brand, that is a creator archetype. So I'm still a jester. I view things through a jester lens, but I put on a creator hat when I'm doing that.
Exactly.
And when I am coaching somebody and I'm really drilling down and we're working on the transformation to make them like a big business owner, that is my sage archetype.
Okay.
So we have those types. We have a sovereign, and now a sovereign archetype that you'd be familiar with, that would be like the Queen of England would be a sovereign archetype.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of archetype you're looking at there. There's someone who they really their strengths are rank, tradition. Like, they are very high performing and they really are level headed. Like, that's kind of they care a lot about the tradition of it all. Rolls Royce would be a good example of sovereign.
So
Caregiver.
how can you define, like, but when you're explaining it to somebody, let's say some business owner is actually reaching out to you and they're looking to build their archetype. How can you define them? That what is it? Like, why is it important? Why do you need it?
So what you do with it is you're able to look at your archetype and all of a sudden everything else falls into place. It's not the only piece you need. And I don't recommend you use it as your only piece. But once you realize what your archetype is, like personal brand wise or brand wise,
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier to see this is why you do this, because certain archetypes have certain challenges and they have certain strengths. And when you're aware of them, it's easier for you to say, oh, I can create offers that have this and that in them, or I can do this because these are my strengths. Sometimes you don't see them from it's hard to read the label inside the box, isn't it? I mean, it is.
Exactly.
So when you play to these archetypes, someone like me who just met you, I can figure out your strengths and your weaknesses like that by figuring out your archetype. And it doesn't take forever to figure all of this out. And then an archetype puts your clients at ease or your customers at ease because they're familiar with these archetypes. So when we incorporate them into your branding, there's a sense of familiarity that a client is like, oh, this is nice. This is comfortable. And they don't know why this is comfortable, but it's because they've been familiar with archetypes their whole life. They're in every story ever told.
Mm-hmm.
They've been used as a tool forever. So it only makes sense to incorporate them into branding to let you speak to your customer on a better level and be understood by them without it having to be a struggle. When you do your own branding, a lot of times you don't go to that level, and it can be a little bit more That's why a lot of brands that are done by, and there's nothing wrong with DIY brands to get started. Let me be clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta start somewhere. Massive imperfect action. Just do it. But once you're ready to invest, make sure you look into archetypes because it will speak to your client on a deeper level.
Exactly. And you can build that connection with your target audience or your customers.
Exactly. And it's psychology based because we all are in tune with that.
Exactly. So, do you have any advice for business owners who are looking to build their brand?
Do it. So, no joke, that's my advice. You should definitely be doing it. And like I said, if you have to DIY it at first, that's fine. Like, just make massive and perfect action, even if it's not what it will be later. Just do something to get it out there. Think through the whys, the 5 levels of why. Start with your core values and then move on to your brand voice. Investing in brand strategy is so worth it. However, sometimes the budget doesn't allow, and you know what? So be it. It is like if it doesn't allow, then it doesn't allow. Just you can do it yourself if you need to, and then when it allows, invest in it.
So, how can people reach out to you if they are looking to build their brand?
I am everywhere. You can find me at MaggieIsley.com. It's my name here on the screen.com. You can find me at, if you want to find me on Facebook, you can go to MaggieIsley.com/EEC. So that is E like Edward, C like crazy. That will take you to the Facebook group. It's just a shortcut, and you can join us there. If you would like to find me on Instagram, it is my username is Maggie and then D like Diane and then Isley. So yeah, you can find me any of those places. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Maggie. It was a pleasure having you here today. And I hope our discussion will give most of our audience a clarity to how to be recognizable and known by their audience, because branding is such a thing that it's not something that you feel like what are you selling or what is your product or service. It's something that people think about yourself, because when they're looking at the big brands, you can relate. The minute you have that name in your mind, you can relate to what is the offering, what am I getting. So it is a very important thing when somebody is starting a business or when somebody is trying to have their brand set up. And the more consistent you are with your values, with your communication, the more clarity you will have for your audience, and your brand will, your audience will actually trying to will relate to your products or services. So thank you so much for coming today. It was a really helpful, and all the strategies and tips are really good. That I actually, when I started researching about branding, I found out that it's a huge thing. It has a lot of things involved in it when you're creating your website, your logo, your social media messaging, even your social media channels that you're going to. It has everything involved, and once you have that branding set up, it can do wonders for you.
Yeah, it does the heavy lifting. Once you have it, it does all the heavy lifting for you, and it's really something that all you need to do is know how to use it once you have it set up. And that's why it can be expensive, is because it literally does a lot of the conversion. And then all of a sudden the cost becomes pennies over time.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, leave us a comment below and we will be happy to help you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. It's Green Marketing Zone. And thank you so much for watching. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.